Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, as always, for taking a bit of time out of your very busy days to join me on Wednesdays with Wayne. Appreciate all you being here. Looks like we got a really good crowd today as we dig into the second session of the Ultimate Listing presentation. We're going to talk pricing today. I'm going to give you a layout of pricing strategy. I'm going to go through a few of the immutable laws as a setup to this, a few of the laws that we covered in some of the previous sessions, because they really do play into the what we have to have sellers understand when it comes to putting properties on the market. I do want to say something to you guys today that is really off topic, but I want to start with this. In what I'm seeing in the industry right now, I think it's important that at least the people that I interact with understand what the trend is that I see going on right now. And here's the trend. Buyers are returning to the marketplace. Buyers are returning to the marketplace. We know this because the clients that I have that have very strong online plays, their online leads are starting to go up dramatically. So we know buyers are returning. I can go down the rabbit hole and tell you why that is that it's happening, but a lot of the people that got priced out, it's becoming relatively well known. The trend is for rates to drop. That's bringing buyers back, payment-driven economy, those types of things. But I want to stress something to you guys today that we're not going to talk about it in detail today. We will talk about it in detail after the Ultimate Listing presentation sessions are over. Here's what I want to stress to you. If you're not deeply in relationship with your past clients and your sphere of influence, guys, you have got to wake up. And when I say deeply in relationship with them, I mean that you are their person, they know you are their person, you know they know you are their person. You are contacting them regularly. And I'm going to tell you that regular number is north of 24 times. We are seeing more and more people start everything online today. And the analogy that I will give you is Amazon Prime. I don't know how many, we talked a little bit about this before. Absent a really strong, incredibly strong personal referral, consumer is going to go online. And they're going to use the online vehicles as their filter for referrals. They're going to look at Google reviews. They're going to look at anywhere they can to try to find agents unless they get an incredibly strong, stronger than ever before, in my opinion, incredibly strong referral from one of their friends. I don't even know how to frame this, a stop the presses referral. Like, don't even think about going online. Let me tell you exactly who you need to use. This is a shift that I see going on in our consumer behavior. We're doing more and more things online, and online is becoming our first place we all tend to go to do our research. So if you're not playing strongly in that online space with a presence, number one, I would tell you to start researching that and figure out how to do that, and we can talk about that. But secondly, if you're not going to go down that path, you have got to fortify your relationships with your past clients more so than ever before. All right, I'll just open with that. Don't mean to scare everybody. I'm just seeing this play out, and I want people that I interact with to understand the changes, the subtle changes that have been so subtle that sometimes we've missed them, but the subtle changes in the playing field. Okay, now back to why we're here today. Ultimate Listing presentation. Session 2 is pricing. Now, remember session 1, we talked about the conversation, right? The questions. We never really said anything in session 1. We asked fabulous questions. If you will ask the fabulous questions, pricing becomes a much easier process. Walking someone through a pricing model becomes easier. And the pivotal questions of all of those questions that I gave you 2 weeks ago, the pivotal questions are the first ones. The first ones being, have you been through this before, right? And having them lay that out. What's the most important thing to you this time when you sell your house? And on a scale of 1 to 10, and please don't, sell this question short. On a scale of 1 to 10, how honest do you want me to be with you? You've got to ask that question to be able to have a really great pricing conversation with sellers. Okay. So the basic premise of today, and we went through this last time, but I think it's very, very important. Every listing on the market is in one of three positions. Always, every listing in the marketplace is in one of three positions. We have been, over the last couple of years, being able to price higher than market value. My contention right now is we need to be pricing at market value. So the kind of the divergence we're seeing in the marketplace nationally is you're seeing longer market times, but that's only framed with the houses that have been sitting there for a long time with no offers. There's a lot of properties that are coming in, boom, day one on the market, multiple offers day three, out of the market day four, already sold, moving on while everybody else is sitting there. So we are reaching this point. We are here, I believe, to where there are two different types of listings. There are listings that are on the market, and there are listings that are in the market. And pricing over anything else is what positions a property to be in the market, in the proper market for the property. Now, the question is, how in the world do we explain all that to a seller? I'm going to try to show you. Basic question of today, your current listing inventory, and I always will say this to y'all, if you have a listing right now and you know it's too high, I believe you have a duty to go back to that seller and have a conversation with them. I think it's only fair. It's not fair to a seller to sit here and do everything that you asked me to do when you know my house isn't going to sell. You know it's too high. And so throughout this session and the next one, I'm going to try to give you the methodology there to go have that great, very serious conversation with your sellers. And why is your current listing inventory, if you have one of those, why is it that you're overpriced, right? I believe just conceptually it's impossible to underprice a house. That's just one of those, I think it's impossible to underprice a house. But if you got houses that are sitting, no amount of marketing will fix a bad price. Okay, that's why we talk marketing last, right? So no amount of price, which we're going to talk about today, will overcome the fact that this is a seller that you don't want to be around. This is a rude, nasty person you don't want to be around. It doesn't matter where they price their house, it's going to be a distasteful deal. Well, no amount of marketing will fix a bad price. We've got to have the relationship side of it in line, then the pricing, then we allow marketing to kick in. We're going to talk a few of the immutable laws, not all of them. So the first law that is now back in play in the traditional sense is the law of emotions, and it simply says buyers start the process in a very pragmatic way, then they become emotional. Sellers start out emotionally and become pragmatic. This is now back in play again. Buyers are starting the process again. They know they have a sense that the marketplace has slowed down because the media has been talking about it. So the lever that buyers have on their side is time. Buyers are now going to start the process again. I want to live in this part of town. I need this many bedrooms, this many baths. I'm not emotionally involved in any of this. I'm not going to have to make a decision in 8 minutes after I walk through the house with a cursory view. I got time to go home and think about it. When they put pen to paper, when they actually buy a property, they buy it from emotions. They buy it from those things at the second and third level that intrigue them. And we'll talk about the levels of that here in a second. Now, sellers, opposite side again. Sellers start out very emotionally. This is my home. I live here. I love this house. This is the one that I chose. What do you mean other people don't like my home? This is what happens. This is what kicks in with longer market times. When both parties are operating from emotions, here's how it works. The buyer is emotionally involved. The seller is emotionally involved in the beginning of the transaction. So if you sell a listing quickly to a buyer that's emotionally involved, you're going to have a great closing because they're both operating from emotions. Get one pragmatic person in the conversation, things could get ugly. Get two pragmatic people, things will get ugly. You get a buyer who doesn't care one way or the other, an investor client, let's say, who's buying a property that the seller's had on the market forever, you're probably going to have some conflict out of that deal. So how do we know the walk and talk of the pragmatic seller? That's the seller who goes, do these people not realize that I've dropped my price $20,000? And what they have to understand is the buyer really doesn't care that you dropped your house $20,000. If it was $20,000 higher, they wouldn't have looked at it anyway. That's the pragmatic seller. Okay. Law number 2 is baseline. Definitely in play. Buyers draw a baseline of physical features and they will not go below it. They will take features over and above what they expect to see. In other words, a 3-bedroom buyer, they'll take a 4-bedroom house. A 2-car garage buyer, yeah, I'll take 3 cars of garage. Yeah, I'll take more square footage than what I thought I needed, but I won't take less. A 4-bedroom buyer will not buy a 3-bedroom house. A 2-bath buyer will not buy a 1-bath, and so on. So buyers draw a baseline of physical features and don't go below it, and that definitely plays into the pricing strategy. Another law is the payment. Buyers don't care about the final sales price of the house they purchase. Oops. They only care about, and here we go again, we're a payment-driven economy. Where did all the cash of 2021 go? Buyers only care about their down payment and their monthly payment. And the societal shift that has happened very subtly over the last 20 to 25 years, buyers tend to max themselves out on what their monthly payment can be. That is a departure from the way Americans used to look at things. We used to take people in for a loan app, and the lender would say, you could qualify for this, and the buyer would go, oh, I'm not ever obligating myself for that much payment a month. But now we do. So buyers will buy the best house they can find for the down payment they have and the monthly payment they can afford. Law number 4 is ratio. Because of this, properties always bring 96 to 98% of listed price in every market, every time. There's very little negotiation that goes on in a real estate transaction. The reason this is so important is you'll have sellers go, now I know I can always come down, but I can't go up, right? I got to build in a little room for negotiation. I'm going to show you some strategies today to help them self-discover why that is such a faulty way of going through this process. Law number 5 is time. This is one of the reasons that adding in extra money so I can come down is not a good thing. Time is not a seller's friend. Time is the ally of the buyer. Always has been the ally of the buyer. The longer a property is on the market, it's guaranteed the less money it will bring. Okay? It's just the way that it is. If someone drives by a house repeatedly, whether you're a realtor or whether you're a member of the public, you drive by a house for a long time and it's still sitting there, what's the first thing that goes through your mind? What's wrong with it? There must be something wrong with this house because it's still sitting there. And the other part of it is y'all deal with brand new inventory, you don't deal with old inventory. So price reductions over time don't really they don't really fire up the marketplace as much as having it priced properly in the beginning does. Law number 6 is expectations. The condition of a home needs to be at the market. Buyers will not pay extra money for features they do not expect to see. And yet sellers will want to tell you all of the extras that they have done. Okay? And we have to be able to navigate our way through that conversation from a pricing standpoint, acknowledging the extras that the seller is telling us about, but being able to politely show them why there's not a dollar for dollar return in the vast majority of things that people do. This is why I told you in session 1, take lots of notes as you're walking through on that initial visit, right? But try not to comment. Because if you make a comment, a seller might go, oh, and look, we just re-wallpapered, we just painted all of this. Oh my gosh, this is wonderful. That's so lovely. I love what you did there because we're building rapport. And in the seller's mind, it's like, oh, the realtor likes it, ergo, there's more value there. So try to stay as neutral as you can because buyers will not pay extra money for features they do not expect at what I would call the first level. And I'll explain that to you in a second. So then there's the ultimate law to me, which is the law of the bracket. Buyers buy in price brackets. They buy in price brackets. They're going to buy the best house they can find in the bracket that they can qualify for. They will tend to go to the upper end of the bracket they can qualify for. They may start out the process, again, remember, buyers start out pragmatically. They may start the process looking at a price range below what they know they could actually afford, but mentally, buying a house is a massive system of compromise. I've always told people that, look, if you can spend $30,000 for a house, that's all you can spend. Your dream house is like a $50,000 house. If you can spend $300,000, if I ask you to describe your perfect house, it'll be a $500,000 house. If you can spend $3 million, it'll be $5 million. So when we acknowledge that, it's like I'm compromising as a buyer. Where's that? What's the house that I'm going to buy that I have to make the least number of compromises on, but it's still within my budget, which is a monthly number. So buyers buy in brackets. Under 100, it's $5,000 brackets. You can run your own stats. Perhaps some of you did over the last 2 weeks. You'll rarely see a property break out of its price bracket. And when it does, you'll see a long market time every time. $100,000 to $200,000 houses is $10,000 brackets. 2 to 3 is 25. 300, and it says it's 50,000, but that's probably up to about $500,000. After that, it starts to become bigger chunks. Over $1 million, it's like $100,000 chunks, $100,000 brackets. Law number 8 is cream, and it simply says cream rises. So the conversation that I want you to have with your seller is a real serious explanation of how the real estate marketplace works. If buyers are going to buy the best house they can find in a physical location, a price bracket, why wouldn't we just want to start out as the best house? Why would we not want to position your property to where the other ones that are out there right now are actually going to help us sell your house? Law number 9 follows up on law number 8 is who is helping who, and it simply says selling house is all about competition. Either the marketplace is helping us sell your house, or we're going to help somebody else sell theirs. If we don't have the physical features that other houses have, we're just going to help the guy with more features sell his house, or the lady with more features sell their house, right? So every time we put a property on the market, one of two things is in play every single time. It's black and white to me. Either the marketplace is going to help us sell your listing, or we're going to help somebody else sell their listing, because cream always rises. Law number 3, or law number 10, is the 3 levels of home sales. Every home that actually sells goes through 3 levels every single time. If nothing else becomes part of your listing presentation, please make what I'm about to tell you part of your listing presentation. The first level of selling any home is we have to have the agents excited about it. We are never going to get all of the agents excited about your house. We're only going to get the agents excited about the house that have a buyer for that type of house and in that price range. But if we can't get the agents excited, we're never going to get to the second level, which is buyers in great numbers. Now, in the overheated market of 21, in the first half of 22, we saw buyers in great numbers. We saw, tons of buyers coming through in hours. I think a realistic expectation for sellers right now is that we should see 8 to 10 showings in the first 2 weeks, okay? Let's set that expectation, and then when we do everything properly and they get 8 to 10 showings in the first 2 days, all of a sudden they think this is a wonderful process, right? The point we have to get to, though, is we're always one of the top 2 or 3 homes. Because what one buyer likes, they all like. What one buyer dislikes, they all dislike. They're all looking at the same houses. They literally are all looking at the same houses. If we put a house on the market and we don't get any showings at all, we didn't cross the first barrier, which was agent excitement. And we need to be discussing this if I have your house listed. We need to talk about, we put your house on the market and nobody comes through. If we've either hit a dead spot in the market or we didn't cross the first hurdle of agents being excited. But the next part is we get agents excited and we get one-off showings. People don't come back 2 or 3 times. Now, that's the dynamic that is now back in play. Traditionally, year over year in real estate, other than this big run-up we had over the last couple of years, buyers make a couple of visits to a house. They didn't have the luxury of time on their side in 21 and the first half of 22 in order to do that. They had to pull the trigger quickly or they weren't going to get it. And they had to have cash. Now they don't have to pull the trigger as quickly. They can go home and think about it, sleep on it, play on it, pray on it, whatever. And because they have that luxury of time on their side, what you're going to see is less deals will fall through. If you remember 21, we had all this furor in the beginning to get contracts, and then I believe it was June of 21, we saw this massive number of properties falling out. And that's because the buyers went home and thought about it and were like, wait a minute, I think we made a huge mistake. Let's use property inspection to jump back out. We're not going to see that as much anymore. First level is agent excitement. Second level is buyers in great numbers. Third level, when we check for feedback, the key value proposition that you can bring to the table for a seller, we find out we're always one of the top 2 or 3 homes. At each level of this, it gives us an indicator of whether we're on the market or in the market. You can be on the market and never hit any of these 3 levels. But if you're in the market, like you're really in the market, you're priced where you need to be, your condition is what people expect, you'll hit all 3 of these levels. And if we're doing it properly, you'll do it in a short window of time because that's how we're going to maximize your profitability as a seller. Just a few more. Law number 11 is control. Real estate's all about control. Somebody always has more control over the other. It's my job, if you hire me, to have strategies to put you in control of this conversation and of this narrative and of this situation. You have 5 ways of getting in control as a seller. Number 1 is your time on market. I'll prove to you statistically why the shorter the market time, the more money you're going to get for your house. Number 2 is by the price that you ask, making sure that we get even the right pool of buyers coming in. Number 3 is how easy your house is to get into. So these days of sellers, these days of what we did in 21, which is like, we're listing the house today, we'll look at offers, we'll open up all the offers on Sunday. That's over. Buyers are not going to wait around for that. Okay, make the house really hard to get into. People will just move on. Buyers know they have some level of control. They don't have as much control as they think they do. We're still in the seller's market, but these things are starting to play back in. Obviously, the condition of the house is a lever for sellers, and the terms is another lever. Buyers only have 2 control levers. How long a house has been on the market. The longer you're on the market, the more control starts to shift to the buyer. And then the second piece of the puzzle is the condition of your property. It's not how much you're asking for it. Buyers do not differentiate among the houses they see by price once they're in the price bracket, because there's not enough difference, about a $6 a month difference, and it's a payment-driven economy. So the real key is making sure that we're priced properly so we get the right group of buyers in. Once a buyer gets in a price bracket, they will look at everything in the bracket, and they will not differentiate on those homes by money. They will differentiate based on features. All right. So in the first session, we talked about a whole lot of stuff that I hope you've had time to practice on. If not, I hope you take time to practice. Today, we're going to talk specifically one thing, and that's a market analysis. How do we run a market analysis? And more importantly, how do we present a market analysis where the seller goes, oh, I get it, right? I mean, I know when we do these sessions live, I would always ask people in the room, how many of you feel like you're really good at figuring out what houses is worth? And everybody would raise their hand. I'm like, keep your hand up if you're really good at having a seller understand what their house is worth, and tons of hands would go down. So we're going to talk specifically today about the CMA. So the truth in every listing presentation, somebody's really passionate about what this house is worth. The problem we get into is 95% of the time it's the seller, not the agent. The agent just, in a lot of cases, just wants another listing because we all know that listings are the ultimate leverage point in real estate. There's been a theory out there forever, just take it at any price. I mean, at least you've got some inventory. An overpriced listing is better than no listing at all. Well, for the agent it is, not for the seller. An overpriced listing actually damages the seller far more than getting their price right in the very beginning. Remember that because sellers start out emotionally, they only have to defend their price with emotions, nothing else. Why do you think your house is worth this? Because that's how much I want, right? Or because my neighbor told me they got that, or I know I can always come down, all those things. You have to be prepared to defend your price logically and from every possible angle, all right? This is why I believe the two-step process is so important, because not only do we have to be able to establish, we go look at the house, we get we get how the house looks, we get the smells of the house, we see how clean it is, we see all of these things. We try to put our buyer hat on and take a lot of notes. Now we've got to go off and figure out what the value is and develop the strategy to be able to defend our number to them from every possible angle. And that's why I think you need to build in 24 hours between the first visit and the second visit. So here's the basic theory of pricing. Number one, because the buyers approach the process pragmatically, at the very first level, meaning the showing level, every house is average. Every house is average. They haven't had a chance to have the extras that your seller wants to hang the value on. They haven't had a chance to explore those yet. Maddie, I see we got somebody with their hand up. We want to open it up for a question really quick.
Absolutely. Let's see. So we've got two people. So Janine, I am going to give you permission to speak. If you'd like to unmute, you're welcome to ask your question.
Janine, if you're watching this alone and not in a group, if you'll just hold your hand down on the space bar on your computer, it will turn on your microphone. No?
Okay. It might not be working, or it could have been an accident. So we can move on and I can reach out to you.
All right. Thank you. Okay. And by the way, guys, throughout this whole thing, please do that. Raise your hand. Let's ask questions along the way. Let's don't save them all till the end. All right. Let's go ahead and deal with each of these points as we need to. All right. Because the buyers approach the process pragmatically, there's levels to this, right? So if you look at number two, extras only matter at the second level. That's when people have actually seen the house, right? That's when the extras that the seller wants to put value on start to kick in. Your CMA should represent a very specific type of property that's actually as close as possible to your subject in a very large price range, because we want to give the seller every opportunity to get the most money that they can. If the sellers understood how buyers go through this process, they would understand how important accurate pricing is, right? That's our job, is to educate. Your job as a listing agent is to educate sellers on how buyers work their way through the system and see what the pattern is. And once we understand the pattern, then positioning becomes, honestly, very logical. Your pricing model and conversation should bring out the reality of pricing, right? That there's very little negotiation that goes on. There's a direct correlation between the number of days on market and how much negotiation goes on. While price is presented in my world in a tabular format, always have detail sheets or have your computer at the ready or your iPad or whatever to show deeper dives into every property on the CMA in case you need to go into details about any particular property. All right. But what I'm going to propose to you, what I'm going to show you is I want to show you a tabular format that gives a seller context, not only on the vibrancy of the market, but allows you to draw out some really nice, very simple comparisons.
Wayne, we have a question
here. This is the most crucial part. Oh, okay. Go ahead, Maddie.
Actually, we've got two questions coming here. One, what do you consider to be a very large price range? 10,000?
No, shoot the moon. I would 100,000. It doesn't really matter. I mean, I know that sounds weird. You could really, if you can get dialed in on, and you guys can test this out. If you can get dialed in on a part of a particular town, okay, a square footage, an age, a number of bedrooms, baths, garages, whatever those particular drivers are for your market, you can literally just not put a price in. And the computer, the MLS will tell you what people have been willing to pay for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, whatever. So no, I would go way more than 10,000. I'd go, I mean, like where I live, the average sales price is I think it's about 250,000. Okay. So if my numbers, if my gut tells me when I go look at the house, my gut tells me I'm dealing with a $250,000 house. I mean, I think just from my own market knowledge, this thing's around 250. I'll run it up to 3.25. Because what's going to happen is there aren't going to be any sales up there. People haven't been willing to pay that for a house like yours, but you're going to see in a second. But I want you to be able to show them that you gave them every chance for the house to be worth 3.25. But the key to this is we've got to be comparing very specific types of property. Okay, I'll show you kind of how it plays out in a second. Maddie, we have another question?
Nope, we resolved it. So feel free to carry on.
All right. So this is the most crucial part, guys. We've covered these questions in the beginning. Have you been through the process before? Selling a house easy or hard? Did it take a long time or not very long? What's your mindset about this? What's the most important part to you this time about selling a house? What's the one thing we better make sure we nail no matter what? What else could we add to make it even better? What's that third thing that we can knock this thing out of the park? What do you expect from me if you choose to hire me? Or what do you expect from any realtor? What could I expect from you? How do I win with you? What's one thing I better make sure I always do? How do I lose with you? How do you prefer to communicate? Scale of 1 to 10. How honest do you want me to be with you? Then we go through hey, here's my list. Wow, look at that. They match up, because they always will, because we're human beings. We're operating from emotion. And you do this enough, you'll start to see the absolute pattern to this. And as we're into the pricing strategy, we want to be sure we tie all comments back to the top 3 issues. Okay? Key numbers and correlations that I think you have to be able to pull out of this and shine a light on. Number 1, listing price to sales price ratio and percentage. Okay? We want to show them statistically how little negotiation actually goes on. Number 2, the average days on market for a property like theirs. Okay, so let's go back a little bit here. What's the most important thing to you? Well, the most important thing is I get X for my house. What's next? Well, I want to make sure, I want to be in and out and done with this thing in 30 days. From the time I put it on the market to the time I close, I want to have it be in 30 days. Do not say, well, that's unrealistic, because just that's what they want to have accomplished. Write it down. The follow-up question to that would be, well, what's important to you about 30 days, right? But in the CMA, you're going to show them, and I'm going to tell you a story here in a little while of something that actually happened to me. You're going to show them the average days on market for properties like theirs, and the story drives home the point of why you have to be so on purpose and so careful, just the trite little things you might say in a listing presentation. So you want to pull out the average days on market, the numbers of bedrooms, baths, etc., of the houses you're comparing them to. Again, we want to see a match with what they have. We're going to show them the houses that they're currently competing with, i.e. the active properties that are on the market. We're going to show them the average price of sold, and expired/withdrawns. These are the houses that were on the market but never sold. If there's any disagreements on the price, go back over the numbers in the context of the top 3 issues until you either have an agreement or you decide you're not going to. Let's talk how we do this. So here's the dialogue. Let's talk about the value of your home, right? So now remember, I've asked you all these questions. I went through the expectations, what you expect from me, what I can expect from you. Hey, by the way, I have my own list. Here's what I expect from everybody. Here's what you can expect. Can we change gears for a second? Let's talk now about the value of your home. because based on what I know, so I would love to represent you. So let's talk about the value. Anytime we look at the value of a home, there's parameters within which people buy homes. There's certain things they're looking for. The reality is they're looking for the same thing you were looking for when you bought this house. So here's the parameters that I used. Now, to tie this together, if you remember, one of the first questions I wanted you to ask when you first went to the door, hey, as we walk through the house, either A, tell me what you feel are the selling features of your home, or B, tell me why you bought this house over the others that you looked at. Okay, so we're trying to, from beginning to end, I want this to be a really tight narrative for you guys. So here's the parameters that I use. Show them exactly how you ran your search. I would suggest that you come up with a simple sheet like this. And here's the dialogue, right? Every house I'm about to show you is a 3-bedroom house because you have 3 bedrooms. They all have 2 or 2.5 bathrooms. You have 2 bathrooms. They all have 2-car garages. My market, brick is a big deal. So they're all brick homes, just like yours. They're all in a residential size lot. I'm not going to show you anything that's on any kind of acreage. According to tax records, you have 2,250 square feet. So everything I'm about to show you is between 2,000 and 2,500. Now, I know when I asked you on the phone that you said you felt like that the average said that your house is worth about 250. So I want you to know I ran this from 2 to 300. You could blow the top out of that number. If you went to 350, it wouldn't matter. Your house, according to tax records, is 14 years old. Everything I'm about to show you is between 10 and 20 years old, like yours. Not going to compare you to anything brand new. And they're all in this particular part of town. Now, you all have to kind of dig into this a little more. You know the drivers of your particular markets that you're in. The marketplace that I lived in, still live in, it was driven massively by high school. We have 5 high schools in town, and you could kind of tag, at least at the entry level, you could tag area by the high school that houses were in. But regardless of how it is, right? I want you to show them exactly what the deal is. Would you agree that your house would fit into this criteria? That's a question that you need to ask. And they're going to say yes if you've done this, right? If they say no, you're going to be in trouble, okay? Now, ask to regroup, but if they say no, here's how they'll say no. Well, yeah, that's my house, but we have the sun porch. You know what, you're right, you do, and we're going to talk about that sun porch here in a bit. Or, yeah, they'd be like this, but we just put the new hardwood floors everywhere. Yeah, I get it. We're going to talk about those hardwood floors and what kind of value they're bringing to the table, okay? If they have a disagreement, that's how they'll frame it. They want to make sure that you've acknowledged the extras that they pointed out in the very first meeting. Let's talk about how we present price. I believe that the order that you do this in, I don't know why that keeps popping on my computer. Whoa. What have I just done?
You're good to go on our end, Wayne.
Well, I've got a whole different screen on my end. Hold on. Hang on. We have a technical difficulty here. There we go. Now I'm back. Sorry. Okay. You can see, Maddie, you can see order of presentation is crucial, correct?
Correct.
Okay, sorry. I had something weird pop up on mine. We're going to start with the sold properties. These are the properties that have sold and closed. We know what people have been willing to pay. Then we're going to show them properties that are under contract. We don't know what they sold for. We know what they were asking for them, but they haven't closed out yet. This gives us a sense of the overall vibrancy of a market. How many properties have sold and are currently waiting to close. Then we're going to show them how many expired or were withdrawn. These are properties that tried to sell but didn't. Then we're going to show them what they're competing against. Right now, when we put your house on the market, here's the competition. And I want you to be able to drill down to the specific top 2 or 3 perhaps that really are the competition. I'll show you how to pull that out in a second. And then lastly, we're going to go to a summary page. After presenting the summary page, be quiet. Simply present your value and be quiet. I used to grab my chin. Okay, this is actually not a joke. I would grab my chin, and what I would do is, the reason I would grab my chin, I was just telling it looked very much like I was seriously waiting for your response, which I was, but I was also grabbing my chin to tell myself, don't talk, right? And the old sales deal, he who speaks first loses. All right, here's the tabular format I want you to use. All right, here's the tabular format I want you to use. Disregard the 20, it'd be 23 now or 22, okay? Don't wear me out with the details. So I would say to you, based on the criteria, again, I ran it 200 to 300,000, 7 properties like yours have sold, and you start walking them through these sales, okay? I would suggest you put them from low to high, as you can see how they're on here, right? From the lowest anybody's been able to pay to the most, right? And then we're going to walk across this sheet. So we're going to show them the original price someone was asking. Then we're going to say, and now here's the asking price when they actually sold. Here's how much they sold for. AP, percentage AP, that's the percentage of asking price to sales price. 99.2, 97.6, right? You'll pull all those stats out. DOM is obviously days on market. The date that they closed, the numbers of bedrooms, baths, and garages that they have. All right? This is the tabular format that I'm speaking about. Are you still going to have a detail sheet with multiple pictures? Certainly you are. But I learned that when we're taking different sheets or clicking through a computer, right? Well, here's this house on this street and that, they lose context. When you're studying one house at a time, they lose context. This gives people really good, quick hit context. The average days on market for a house like yours is 46. The average list price to sales price ratio is 99. Okay. Then we're going, let me go back for a second. Hold on. So we want them to understand that that properties do go through some price reductions, right? Original price to asking price, all right? We want them to understand this key number right here. There's very little negotiation that goes on when we sell a house. Get some kind of an acknowledgement. So let's say that in the presentation, someone said, you know, I really want to be done with this within 60 days. Well, you know what? I know that one of your key drivers was to do this in 60 days. So let's look at this. So the average was 46. In fact, it's 46, but it's skewed very heavily by this house that took 124 days and the house that took 92. But the other 5 houses all operated within the window that you laid out. So I think it should be reasonable that if we do everything properly, we'll be able to hit that target for you. Okay, so this is why, to me, it's so important that you've really kind of dug into these numbers and figured out how you're going to present this before you actually sit down with a seller. Well, now let's look at other properties, because you need a snapshot of more than what's closed. In addition to the 7 that have closed, there's 3 more that are under contract, okay? So there's the asking price when they sold, 239, 249, 249. Average days on market is 30 for those. So once again, it looks like we're going to be able to hit our window. Now going back one, let's say that when I asked you, do you have a price in mind? And the seller said no. And then when I said, what's the most important thing to you? And the seller said that I get my price. Okay, are you willing to share the price with me now? I really want to get 275. I ran this all the way to 300, and the first thing you notice is nobody's gotten 275. The most anybody got was 242.5 for a specific type of property like yours, but you do have the glassed-in porch and you have the wood floors or whatever you've done. Okay. Then here's again where the asking price is worth what went under contract. Now that's the beginning of a really solid snapshot of a market. So we have 10 sales, right? So we have a vibrant market. It's not like you're going to sit here and no one is going to want to buy your property. They're buying properties like yours. Oh, wait, let's look at the properties that were expired. Well, there were 3 houses who put their house on the market and it didn't sell, right? 2 were expired and 1 was withdrawn. Notice over here, here's the days on market. The average days on market for the ones that didn't sell was 130. The average days on market for what has closed is 46. The average days on market for what's under contract is 30. So obviously these 3 people were on the market, not in the market. By the way, look here, 259. We know nobody's paid more than 247, 269, 274. That starts to just let them self-discover, right? You're not telling them, you're just giving them a snapshot of the market. Starts to let them self-discover, uh-oh, doesn't look like anybody's been able to get the amount of money that I said I had to have. Now let's look at what's on the market. Here's what people are asking right now, right? There are 5 houses you're going to be competing head on when we put your house on the market. This is the cream theory, right? Look at the days on market over here. Let's say 90 days, 4 days, 45, 130, and 70. So with the exception of 2 houses, which would be Smith Road and Johnson, these other houses are already behind the curve because the average sales time is 46 days. The average of the under contract is 30. So you can confidently look at the seller and say, look, really we have competition of 2, Smith Road and Johnson. And it means a lot more if you can say to them, and by the way, I went in those 2 homes yesterday. So I can talk at length about these 2 houses and how we stack up in relation to them, because just statistically, the average house sold in 46 days, the under contracts are 30. These guys are behind the 8 ball. In fact, in a lot of these cases, and I hope this makes sense to you as I roll the clock back, you can take this house at 130 days, sitting on the market, right? And you can roll it back to here and go, look, these houses got in and out while this guy was sitting on the market. You can do exactly the same thing with the expireds and withdrawn. So that is the difference between being on the market and being in the market. And this is when I would layer in. So here's kind of the bottom line on selling property. When we introduce your property to the marketplace, we want to make sure that these houses help us sell your house. So Smith Road and Johnson are hands down your stiffest competition. The average sales price of homes like yours, the average sales price, we've had 7 sales. They average $236,200. The average number of homes for sale is 5. It's at 249.4. The expireds were at 268. I know you told me the most important thing, number 1, was you wanted to get your price, and you defined that as 275. I can tell you, and this is when you got to be, this is why I like paper, guys, and this is why I like face-to-face presentations. It's like, guys, look, I want you to go back and look at what people have been willing to pay. The most anybody's paid is 242. I know you said you wanted to get this done in 60 days, but we can hit that marker. It's being hit by everyone that sells their house. We need to price your house, and this is where you've got to know what number you're going to say. We need to price your house at $249,900. In this presentation, this is where I'm going. And then I'm going to sit back, I'm going to hang on, and I'm going to let them comment. What do you think? And I'm open for whatever they say. And they may say, well, we really wanted 275. I understand that, but let's go back and look. Nobody's gotten 275. Look, I understand this is less than what you were expecting. But I need to be, you said on a scale of 1 to 10, you wanted me to be a 10. I'm being a 10 with you. I could tell you a higher number just to get the listing. You'll run into this, guys. Well, so-and-so told me they could get that. I understand. They win by getting a sign in your yard. I don't want to do that. I want to make sure that you hit your goals as well that you laid out for me early in the process. All right? I want you guys to get this down so rote that you're very, very comfortable with it. The only way you're going to do that is you have to practice. So I'm going to suggest a 249.9, and I'm going to sit back and hear what they say. Okay? And if they go, nope, it's 275 or no deal, then I'm going to go down the dialogue of, okay, hold on a second. What's plan B if it's not 275? We'll just stay here. We just won't move. All right? Then don't go through the process. Now, that's a pretty hard line. I mean, I get it. Or they'll say, well, now, wait a minute, what about my sunroom and my wood floors? You have to know as you go into this. We're going to start, like I said in the beginning, we're going to start with a baseline. You have to make your own well-reasoned decision as the agent. Does the sun porch bring something to the table? And if so, how much? Is the condition of this subject house that much better than everybody else, right? Are you in a slice of the market where you are going to price more in relation to what's out there versus what things have sold for? This is why I think it's just so imperative that you get a look at the house first so that you're planning out your dialogue on what you're going to say. Now, I'm going to tell you a story about why it's so important that you say what you need to say and you don't do other things. I had a gentleman call me years ago, and he said, I want to talk to you about listing my house. So I went out there, and he had a house on 3 acres. And when I pulled up, there was another realtor sign in the yard. His house was getting ready to expire. He did not tell me that when he called me. And this agent's a very good agent. And so I walked in, and he showed me around the house, and I said, look, I have to ask, what's the problem? He's a great agent. What do you think happened here? He goes, look, one of the things he told me was his average listing sells in 30 days. I've been on the market with him for almost 90 days, and he hasn't sold it, and I think I have an above average house. And I said, well, what's the target you're trying to hit? He said, well, I was trying to get this thing done in 60 days. I said, all right, let me go run some numbers. Now that I've seen your house, great house, by the way. Now that I've seen your house, let me go run some numbers, and I'll come back out. So I went and ran the numbers. He had a great house. I think it was $325,000 on 3 acres. And I went back 90 days while he'd been on the market trying to figure out, is it a dead spot in the market? Were there properties that were selling? I mean, what's the real story here? And what I found was that there had been properties that had sold in the 300s between like 3 and 350. They'd all had more than 3 acres. They'd all been 5 acres, 7 acres. One of them, I think, was a 10 acre. They were all sold. He was now the only house on the market, right? So if someone wanted to move to this particular town, it was just on the outskirts of Springfield, he was the only game in town now because everything that had more land than he had sold. So I went back out to him the next day and I said, here's what we found. I said, and I laid it out. I said, look, there's been properties that have sold while you were there, but it looks to me like here's the acreage numbers. Everybody was picking up more acres than what you had. They were gravitating toward the acres. Now that's the bad news. The good news is they're all gone. You're the only game in town. But I said, I want you to understand something. The average market time for a suburban property on acreage in this location, the average market time of all these are sold is 120 days. Are you okay with that? And he goes, yeah, now that you've told me that, I'm fine with it. And it was a disconnect between what the agent had sold as a pitch on why you should hire him versus the reality of a real estate market. I listed the house at exactly the same sales price as where they had it listed because I couldn't prove to him it should have been less. It's just that now his cream had risen. And, I wouldn't tell this story if it was a nightmare. Literally, I got a call the next day from a gentleman who said, I think I want to see that house because it had a little studio type thing. A guy named Gary Locke bought it. So if you ever if you ever look at Sports Illustrated back in the day, there were these cartoons of these very angular characters. If you're laughing now, you know what I'm talking about. They would, like, football players have these really wide shoulder pads and these really bitty narrow waists and really long thin legs. That was Gary Locke. He was an artist. And he said, man, I really like this house, but I got to sell mine first. I did have a guaranteed sale program. And I said, well, what do you have? And he had like a $90,000 house. And I said, well, if you'll buy this one, I'll buy yours if I have to. And then we put Locke's house on the market, and somebody called me about that, and they wanted to buy his. They had a $40,000. Long story short, it was a lot of business. I never bought a house, but it was positioning things and being very honest and open with people. You can do this literally every time. You can do this every time without fail, no matter what. But you've got to have the mindset for it. You've got to get the dialogue down. You got to run your numbers and get the strategies. There is nothing more important than becoming a powerful listing agent in any real estate market, especially in the marketplaces of today. So in closing, yeah. Okay, go ahead.
You're welcome to go ahead.
No, the question, people, or me?
Whichever you prefer. We've got two questions.
No,
but
go ahead. Ask the questions. Ask the questions
Okay.
before we get to the end of this.
So one of them says, what is your strategy when new homes are your competition? Here's the scenario. I have a listing now that is priced right compared to recent existing homes, but new construction 5 miles away of similar or slightly smaller size and features is 20 to 30,000 below existing homes. It was discussed with my sellers prior to listing. It's only been a week, but 2 of our showings have said it's overpriced on the feedback. So what is your strategy when new homes are your competition?
I'll be very, very frank with you. Right now in this market, that's a tough one, because these builders, if they're you're seeing builders now make lots of offers, do 3-2-1 buy downs. They'll do all kinds of things. I know of one market where the builders are slashing their prices as soon as these houses are done because they don't want to sit on the inventory. It may be a situation where you may have to pull the house off the market until this new construction thing plays around. As a general rule, people will buy a new house over a used one, even if it's only a year or 2 old. Taking a year or 2 old house and competing against brand new is tough. It is one of the toughest scenarios for a seller. So I would go back to the seller and I would say, and I know it's only a week, so you got to give it a little time, right? But you have to be able to tell me, what features does this have that the new ones don't have? You mentioned it's larger, right? And a lot of times people are like, well, I have all the blinds in, I have a privacy fence, the new ones don't, okay? And over time, you know, of the people that came through, did they go buy new construction? Right? I mean, one of the things that we have to be telling sellers, and this gets into the next session, but as a general rule, you're going to have a lot of people come through your house that aren't really a buyer. They're not really, or they're not really a buyer for your house when we check for feedback. That's why feedback is so important. So a week and a couple of showings, it's a little too small of a time frame, but it's starting to give us some indications. But competing against brand new, when you're newer, like 5 years old or less, a lot of times it's tough. Plus, lumber prices have come down. Builders' prices are coming down a little bit, or at least softening. Creates a tough scenario. So I guess my question for you to ask the seller, what's their plan B? Do they need to sell the house, or they just wanted to sell the house? And if you want to follow up with that answer, we can get into some deeper dialogue. Is there another question, Maddie?
It looks like they just responded. They need to sell.
Then what we're going to constantly do is every 2 weeks, all right? I want you to every 2 weeks, I want you to send them a printed report in the mail. We call it the biweekly report, okay? And I want you to look specifically at, so when you start doing biweekly reports, we want to give them a snapshot of the marketplace in their price range. When we did the CMA, it was very defined properties like yours. Now we want to broaden it and say, in our price range, what's moving, okay? And if we start seeing that in a 2 week time frame, 3 houses went under contract and they were all new construction, we're going to have to do a pricing adjustment, because if it's a newer house, it's not going to be a condition issue. It's just that I could go buy the brand new one. Okay. So, and if you want more details on how to run that, send Maddie an email. I'll circle back around. We're going to cover this in the next session. I promise you. We're going to cover communication protocols with sellers. But the worst thing you can do is have a seller sitting there going, oh my gosh, what do we do? And not give them a moving, fluid snapshot of the marketplace. Okay. Next question, Maddie.
They actually just responded and said that they're planning to revisit the price at the end of this month. They said thank you and that they're sending a seller report today. So perfect.
Perfect.
Our other question is, what if the seller will not allow you a second visit? Twice recently, I set it up for a 2-part. After the first part, they canceled the follow-up appointment.
Have you called them and asked them why they canceled? I don't mean to answer a question with a question.
Anonymous attendee, if you would like to respond or reply in the Q&A, we'd be happy to elaborate on that with you.
And did you deliver a pre-listing packet?
This says they just said they went with someone else. No explanation.
Had you set both appointments on the first phone call?
See if they respond in real time. You're also welcome to raise your hand and we'd be happy to give you the ability to speak and ask Wayne. They said we emailed it because they are out of town, and no.
You emailed what? I'm sorry. I don't mean to keep playing 20 questions, but it's kind of my nature.
The seller packet.
So but you did not already. Okay. So we got to have a meeting already set. That will tend to have people, I'm not telling you everybody, because, that will tend to make people not want to cancel that second meeting if you set them both from the very beginning. So that's a key to playing this 2-step game, is you got to say, hey, I need to go out and take a look at your house. I'm going to email you some information, but let's go ahead and set up another time for us to get together and talk about the value, and get them to commit to that and then reinforce that with materials. And so I'm going to give you an idea make sure it's the right one. I'm going to give you an idea of how you can reinforce that. All right. So if you went ahead and set up to, Maddie, can you see this as I'm holding it up?
I cannot with your virtual background. If you want to turn it off, then they may be able to see it.
Okay. Hold on, guys. Because I want to talk to you a little bit about, I know we're kind of going down a rabbit hole here, but hold on.
Okay, now we should be able to see it if you hold it up closely.
Okay. Now can you all see this?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So if you had done this first, you had done this setup, right? And you had emailed them something, but you had their home address, okay? And you overnighted to their home address this, and when they opened it up, it said this.
Hi, Tom. Wayne Frederick here. Thank you so much for agreeing to meet with me next week. Listen, we've sent this packet to you. It gives you some information about our company, tells you a little bit more about us and the way that we work. We'll dig into the details when we get together next week, but I just wanted to let you know how excited I am that you're taking time out of your day to meet with me. So have a great week. I'll see you next week. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
So there's a thing called the law of reciprocity. The law of reciprocity says if you give me information, I'm more likely to either receive your information or have an appointment hold. I think you should explore video cards. That's what these are. I think maybe Maddie sent you out the information from last time on Cheer Trends and how you can get these things. They're not cheap. I'll just tell you they're not cheap. They're about $20 a piece, okay? But to me, spending $20 to fortify and get a listing presentation appointment to hold is money well spent. All right. You got to buy them in mass. Look, you can buy just, you don't have to put you can do whatever, but maybe you guys could go together and do this. You have to buy them in a minimum of a 50 order with the supplier that we use with $1,000 play. but it has so many different uses. All right. So I want to try to keep fortifying, to answer your question, I want to keep fortifying the process so that we don't have that happen to us very often. And that's all going to be about how cool I think you look before I get to talk to you about value. All right. Back into the presentation. So once they've been allowed to discover what working with you is like, closing is, you don't need, but how do you close on people? I didn't really have any closing lines. I'm just like, you want to go ahead? Like, how do you want to do this, right? After our conversation, I'd welcome the opportunity to represent you. Do you feel the same way? Is there any reason not to go ahead? Are we ready to move on? Anything we need before you get started? Do you want me to handle the sale for you? When you get this presentation down, I could sit here and tell you story upon story upon story. People will look at you and go, is that how this works? Is that how really this selling my house works? Yeah, this is how it works. This is like the rules of the game. Now let me show you the strategies, right? Let me show you the strategies. So it'd be like, after our conversation, I'd welcome the opportunity. Do you feel the same way? Yeah, we think so. Well, let me go into my marketing. Let me show you what we do to position your house properly given this set of rules on what the value is. Bottom line is no amount of marketing will fix a bad price. Okay? If in the scenario that whoever asked that question about new construction, if we see that in a 2-week time frame there's 3 houses that sold that were new construction, no amount of marketing is going to overcome that. That's the marketplace telling us people are gravitating toward new. That's why ongoing seller communication is such a huge deal, which we're going to talk about next week. After you have an agreement, now you go to the marketing plan. And it's really just an explanation of how this works, the strategies you're going to implement, and most importantly, how you plan to communicate. And we're going to cover that in 2 weeks. We're going to cover marketing and unique selling propositions, strategy and communication. All right, we're going to see you in 2 weeks for session 3 of the Ultimate Listing presentation. Okay, other questions? I know we're a little over. I've got time if y'all do. What other questions do you have about this pricing model? You will notice one thing about this. Hang on, you will notice one thing about this pricing model. It is not a price per square foot pricing model. I don't agree in a price per square foot pricing model, and I will tell you from my clients that have adopted this model versus price per square foot, they have been able to just really be able to compete very, very favorably. I don't think that a price per square foot, unless you're dealing with tract homes, is a valuation model that ever works. So I will never talk to someone about price per square foot. Okay, questions, Maddie?
If you all have any questions, please feel free to enter them in the chat or Q&A, or you're welcome to raise your hand. It looks like this says you don't bring up or prepare the listing agreement at this meeting, correct?
I would have the listing agreement with me, and I would be ready to sign it up after I went through marketing. Yes.
Great. Do you have a good model to use for making price adjustments?
Yeah, come back in 2 weeks and I'll show you what it is. Okay. Well, because it gets into the biweekly reports. The biweekly reports, okay? So feedback guarantees, and more importantly, the biweekly reports, the ongoing snapshot is the easiest way to get price reduction. The easiest way. Information is key. I always made this assumption with sellers. They were intelligent individuals. If they were armed with the same information we had, they'd probably come to the same conclusion. So we just got to make sure we're armed with the info.
We have one person. It says, I have been an appraiser for over 25 years. I never do a presentation based on square foot.
Thank you.
All right. Anybody else?
Any questions?
If you think of something after the session's over, you're always welcome to send me an email. I'll put my email address in the chat and we can answer it.
We're going to see you on March the 8th. We're going to get into value prop. Oh, we have one more question, Maddie, it looks like.
Do you
and then session 4 is going to be a role play where we're going to go through this dialogue with everybody.
So our last question is, do you ever feel some buyers just want to hear your price?
You mean some sellers just want to hear your price? Oh yeah, sure. Sure they do. But you mean, and they don't really have any intent of selling? They just want to know what it's worth?
Stephen, if you'd like to elaborate.
Or they want to make you speak first?
Says yes, sellers, and they share your price with other agents.
Oh, well, sure. In a competitive environment? Yeah, absolutely. That's why, okay, let's go back to the very beginning, right? Pre-listing questionnaire. By the way, are you going to be interviewing any other agents? Yes or no? Yeah, I'm planning on interviewing. Great. Who are you talking to? I wanted to know going in if I was in that environment. I don't know if I told you guys this last time. I did a radio show in my market for 14 years, all about real estate. It was massive. It was a huge validator, huge lead generator, whatever. And I would end every show with, just remember, I don't ask that I'm the only realtor that you talk to, just that you give me a chance. It's important that you interview realtors. Have a great day. And my idea was that if I kept telling the people that were listening to the radio show to interview, they would know I wasn't afraid of it and they would never interview. And they always interviewed. I was always competing. And this presentation was designed off of calling expired listings and really digging into their frustrations because no one would tell them a true price. And then making sure that I had a presentation that would work in a competitive environment. And as I started this today, I was talking about the online world and all that. And what I'm telling you guys is this: you're competing more than you ever have before as a real estate agent, and it's with faceless, nameless things. It's AI, it's bots, it's websites, and we've really got to get a presentation down that works in a competitive environment. And I know, and I'll be honest with you, I know this presentation still works. I had an old client call me last year, and I referred it out to somebody else, but I went out and talked to him about the value. And the first time I dealt with this gentleman, he had his house in the market, it was vacant, and he said, I need some help. And I said, I don't really do this anymore, but you're an old client, let me help you. And I used this exact format, and when I laid it out to him, he looked at me and he said, I'm way overpriced, aren't I? And I said, yeah, I'm sorry, Michael, you are. He said, I'm really sorry. That somebody needs to tell you. And as a result of that, he called me back and said, I need help again. And I said, hey, this time I can't, I'm gonna refer you off to someone else. But we went through exactly, in fact, the agent laughed at me. He said, you're really gonna bring paper to this thing. And I'm like, dude, this is how I do this. But we got it priced. It was $1 million house, which in our market is huge and rare, and sold in 2 days with a bidding war. I will go to my grave defending this process, defending this dialogue, defending this pricing strategy. I know it works in a competitive environment. Do not be afraid of competing. Do not be afraid of them sharing your number with somebody else. Your number's your number. No agent is going to outperform a marketplace. Buyers are too smart now. There's too much going on. Okay. Any other questions? Oh, I just see a Q&A with a 1 there.
Yes, so I apologize. It was my error. It's actually 3 weeks until March 8th, not 2 weeks, but we will see you on March 8th. We're kind of deviating from our every other week schedule. And then it looks like Diane maybe has a question. Diane, if you would like to unmute yourself, you're welcome to speak to Wayne. Looks like you are unmuted, but we cannot hear you.
Maybe in the chat, maybe you can type the question. Looks like we've got one Q&A also, Maddie. Do we have another question? Oh, now it's gone.
Nope, they were just clarifying on the March 8th. Diane, I'm so sorry we can't hear you. If you'd like to submit a question in the chat or the Q&A, I'd be happy to ask for you. Or you're welcome to send us an email afterward if that's easier.
Okay. I think with that, we'll close. My computer keeps giving me all these notifications. Thank y'all so much. Appreciate y'all very, very much. We will see you on March the 8th, and we'll try to tie this up with a bow and lay out some, well, wait a minute. We've got questions. We've got hands raised.
Let's
We're
see.
not done yet.
Sally, if you'd like to unmute yourself, maybe you can ask a question to Wayne.
Hi, this was a great session, and I just wanted to ask, after you're quiet and shut up and they have a minute to digest what you've presented to them, and then they come back and say to you, well, would you consider taking the listing for another 5,000 over the 249.9? What do you say then?
So, okay. So the law of the bracket would tell me, okay, that if I price it at 254.9, I'm now in an entirely new bracket all the way up to 275. And Sally, my dialogue with people would be, hey, look, this is going to sound really crazy to you, but your best chance of getting $5,000 more is pricing it at 249.9 and creating a bidding war. If we price it at 255, buyers do not, we're now getting a completely different group of buyers. And I know that that sounds crazy, but it's factual, right?
Yep.
And your best chance of getting a higher number is that we price it right in the beginning and we create a bidding war. I am not guaranteeing you a bidding war, but I'm saying it's a possibility. I had this exact dialogue earlier this year in the scenario I told you. I said, Michael, look, and it was funny because he said, are we about to have the same conversation you had with me last time? Because he ended up dropping his price $50,000 on a 525. And I said, no, Michael, we're not going to have the same conversation. But I said, here's the deal. You got a great house under $1 million. And I'm not telling you there'll be a bidding war, but right now, and there was a specific reason why he wanted out of this house and he wanted it to happen quickly. And I said, I'm not telling you we'll have a bidding war, but there's a chance of it. I said, you know, you can go to $1.1 million. You're just going to elongate market times. And it had a fabulous garage. The guy collected Shelby. And I said, you could even go $1 million too, but you got to have a car guy that wants the garage. Your best chance of breaking $1 million is $995. What do you want to do? Now, honestly, Sally, would I walk away from the listing for $5,000? It depends. I doubt it. I doubt it, but I want you to hang in there and I want you to keep having that logical explanation with them, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
I agree. Thank you. I just wanted to know if there was that chance.
Yeah, and well, yeah, I mean, like I say, I can sit here and tell stories all day long, but
Right.
I said that to somebody one time and they wanted to bump it into the next bracket. And I said, it's not going to sell if you go to the next bracket. This particular house, these 3 houses right here are going to thump you. And he goes, all right, I'll price it where you tell me, but I'm not coming off my price. And I swear to you, when I tell you the story, it's a true story. And I looked at him and I said, okay. I said, I'll make you a better deal. If it doesn't perform at the number I tell you, I'll eat the difference. How about that?
Wow.
Let's go. Yeah, I know. Crazy. But, you know, 79.9 house, there was virtually, you know, he had no competition. We got an offer for like 77.5, like day one. And then he looks at me and he goes, you know what you said? And I said, well, hang on, I'm going to try to get it to 79.9. And I said, counter him at 79.9. He countered the other agent. The other agent called and said, I can't believe you countered me. He said, this is a great offer. And I said, well, hold on a second. I firmly believe we're the best house out there at 79.9. If we're not, you got to go buy the best one. And he goes, oh, you are. They'll pay it. I was just trying to get a little bit off. I'm really confident. When I tell you a price that I can get, I want you guys to be incredibly confident with this and be able to defend it and hang into those conversations with people. That's why I think somebody asked the question last time, you know, how long should a listing presentation be? As long as it needs to be. As long as it needs to be, to where we get on the same page on value. I don't want you, and you probably had this experience before, I don't want you walking out of the listing presentation going, oh man, what have I done? This isn't going to sell. I don't want us to ever have that happen. I think there's nothing more productive for y'all to do than give a fabulous listing presentation. So, all right, any more questions? Thank you all so much for your time. As always, really appreciate it. There's how to get a hold of me, or you can send an email to Maddie, admin@stfconsult.com. We will see you on March the 8th. We'll try to sew this baby up with a nice bow, and then the session after that, we'll do a role play. So thank you for your time. Y'all are awesome. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.